you want us to do? What is it that you want us to do? He's going to say, there's this man and his wife, I want to split them up. There's this person, I want you to cause the death of that individual. Then they're going to say, okay, bring us some of his hair, bring us a picture, bring us his name and his mother's name. I'm going to look at this later, inshallah. What's the signs of a sahir? Then they will go and then they will begin to act out on that contract. Some types of magic. We have a type of magic which will cause two people to love one another. They will cause two people to love one another. But ya ikhwan, again, there's no such thing as good magic. When this type of magic is done, a wife usually does it on her husband. I want him to love me and I want to take him away from his family. So he has nothing to do with my in-laws, I want my husband to myself. Very common form of magic. But always, there's always a downside to the magic. There's never anything as good or pure magic. The person, the husband usually, he gets extremely ill, develops disabilities, etc., etc. On top of the fact that you're going to be committing shirk with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a magic of separation, as Allah mentions in the Quran. وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. They learn from those two, they learn from them, that by which they seek to separate a man from his wife. So somebody's jealous, somebody has hatred towards you, wants to separate you. Why is he happy? I want to be happy. Or he was meant to marry me, he never married me, now he's married her, I'm going to make sure that that marriage doesn't last. Extremely common form of magic. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in the Quran. There is a type of magic which is supposedly for medicine. So people do magic believing that it's going to bring them good health, believing that it's going to ward off some form of evil. There is a magic which will keep you away from your health. So trying to kill a person. Magic to actually kill an individual. Magic to block marriage. Especially in the Asian subcontinent, in the Asian culture. It's a case of, you were meant to marry your uncle's daughter, you never did that, so now he makes sure that you don't marry anybody else. Likewise with the sisters. And we have people who are 30, 40, 50 years old trying to get married and they can't get married. But remember, وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. They don't harm anybody except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if this is happening to you, this is by the decree of Allah. This is a test from Allah, a trial from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't attribute something special to the magician. He is a lowly creature, a filthy creature. This is a test and a trial from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some numbers now, because I'm sure you brothers or sisters have come across a ta'weez, and you know, you have the grid, and they call it Ghazali's triangle, because they allege that Imam al-Ghazali, he went to India and he learned this, and then he began to practice it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, we don't attribute this to Imam al-Ghazali, but it is called Ghazali's triangle. Okay? And you will find in this triangle, it's basically a grid, and you will find that in all the directions, the numbers add up to a certain thing. The numbers add up to a certain number. So, the number 3 is for the magician himself. When he puts a ta'weez on, when he does magic, the first thing he's going to do is do a magic which he thinks is going to protect him. This is the number 3. The magician, he did the magic to protect himself. And this is a general platform, shall we say. Number 5 is for medicine. Okay? He thinks, or somebody has an illness, cancer, whatever it might be, they go to a sahir, Maulana, Pir Sahib does a ta'weez, and you'll find that all the numbers add up in all the directions to number 5. You're going to find lots of number 5s within there. And what this is protection, or bringing love, trying to cause love between an individual, bringing people together. Number 9 or number 15 is for sarf. What this is to push people away. So if you find a ta'weez and all of the numbers are adding up to 9 or adding up to 15 or multiples of that, this is a ta'weez which was done to push people away, to try and separate people from health, from wealth, from their spouse, from a family member, whatever it may be. And the number 11 is magic which was done to kill. Okay, the number 11 is magic which was done to kill. And I'll show you an example of this now. This is the sheikh on the left, and they found some magic. And we're going to explain everything in this, what they find in this sheet. Okay, first, it's not very clear, but on the right of that image there, you have a chicken. You have a chicken. This was the sacrificial animal which was sacrificed towards the devils. So they sacrificed, they spilled blood for someone other than Allah. This is major shirk. So we have the chicken. It's quite clear there. This what the brother is holding there, and you can see he's holding it by his beak. That's the chicken. Okay? Now we have in the bag, we have some lentils, and we have some knives, we have some eggs, we have some razor blades, and I think we have some pins as well. Okay? But I want you to count with me how many of each we have, and inshallah we'll come to the conclusion what type of magic this is. Oh, Bismillah. Okay, Bismillah. Okay. So first and foremost, we have under the chicken, we have this piece of string which has been used to keep the chicken's legs together, and it potentially might be knotted together as well. What they're doing now is they are checking the chicken to see if there are any knots or any amulets under the wings of the chicken, because I'm going to show you another video where that was the case. So first they're going to take out the eggs. 1 egg, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and again, the numbers always mean something. 8, 9, 10, and 11. There's 11 eggs in this magic. Now we've got blades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 knives so far. 8, 9, 10, and 11. So there's no coincidence that everything is adding up to 11. This is no coincidence. The Sahir has done this on purpose. There's 1, 2, these are razor blades. And for us, we might just find razor blades in a box with somebody who's, like a dead animal, and we think this is nothing. Somebody's just thrown it over, but every one of the numbers means something, ya ikhwan. And there are 11 razor blades as well. And then they take out pins, and they find there are 11 pins as well. This magic was done to kill somebody. Somebody went to a sahir and said, I want such and such a person dead. So what did he do? He went and he sacrificed to others besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then he did all of this, and he put all of this together. And he did the number 11, and this is for death. And they want to kill, and again, death is only by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to show you another type of magic, and I'm going to challenge you brothers now to tell us what this magic is. And like I said, there needs to be a sacrificial animal, number 1. There needs to be something from the person who you're doing magic on, number 2. There needs to be a number. Remember the number. We're going to see a number of things. That's number 3. And there needs to be if the magic involves 2 people, there needs to be something from the person who wants to have magic done on the other as well. So, what we have here is the sheikh, and this is a graveyard. Okay? And they are picking at a graveyard. So they're digging under a graveyard, and this is what they have found. It's basically a cloth which has been wrapped tight around something else. So now we're going to open it, and I want somebody to tell me, based on what I said, I want somebody to tell me what this magic was used for. Firstly, we have this string, and it's likely that that string would have knots in it as well, and the magician, like we've mentioned, he would blow and call upon the shayateen. So they've cut those knots off. Now this is what we have. We have a sanitary towel. We have a child's used nappy. We have a handkerchief. And we have a lemon with some pins inside of the lemon. And we have the head of a dead bird, as you can see there. So we know what the head of the dead bird is. This is a sacrifice to the shayateen. This is menstrual blood. We have lemons. And one of the lemons, it has pins in it. Okay, let's count the number of pins. 1. 2. I think in this video, the person, he takes all the pins and he begins to count them. So inshallah, let's let them get it all out, and then we can count it inshallah, whilst they, he sort of bravely puts it into his glove. So we're taking the pins out now. This is a fruit which has pins driven inside of it. How many times do we find or we see dolls which have pins driven into the dolls? How often do we find a number of eggs? Somebody comes to me and says, I had 11 eggs thrown onto my doorstep this morning. And the numbers mean something. Okay, so now he's going to count them. There's 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. And 7. Okay, so here's what we have. Buried in a grave, we have the head of a dead chicken. We have a nappy which has been used. We have a like a tampon with a sanitary towel with menstrual blood on it, and we have the handkerchief of a man and a lemon with 7 nails driven into that nail, lemon. Who's going to try and tell me what this means? I'll be very impressed, mashallah, if you can.
Was he trying to break someone up?
What did we say the number 7 was for?
Protection.
Love or protection, or to bring people together.
Wasn't it to bring people together?
That's exactly what number 7 is for. So what was this magic for?
To bring two people together. Family.
Okay, you're on the right lines. Can somebody tell me? It's an amazing situation.
The handkerchief is from a man and the sanctuary child from a woman to bring the husband and wife somebody together.
You're close. Okay, I'll tell you. A woman had been divorced by her husband. She wanted to get her husband back. And her husband also took with him the child. Okay? So what she had done, she had taken the diaper of the child, the handkerchief of the husband, her own sanitary towel, and then they had sacrificed to others besides Allah, and this was magic because she wanted her child and her husband to come back. Okay? The 7 pins in the lemon, this is what they indicate. 7 pins, bring them back together. The husband, we have his handkerchief, we have some of his DNA. We need something from him, as we're going to see. Likewise the woman, she's given her sanitary towel. Likewise the child as well. So we have an athar, we have something from all of them. We have their DNA, their sweat from all of them. The 7 pins indicate the type of magic which was done, and the sacrifice also is the indication of the sihr which was done, and this is to come closer to the shayateen.
So what did the grave have to do with it? Whose grave was that?
We're going to deal with this inshallah. How long do we have? 10 minutes. Oh, there's so much to cover. Let's look at some symptoms of being afflicted with sihr. And inshallah we'll cover that akhi if we get time. Bi'idhnillah. Some symptoms of being afflicted with sihr. It's extremely important to know that sihr involves jinn. Okay? So many of the signs and symptoms of sihr, they are very similar to jinn possession, which are also very similar to bona fide, realistic and real medical conditions. Okay? So I don't want you to sit here and think, I've got 2 of those symptoms that he's mentioned, I've got magic done on me. This isn't the case, subhanAllah. Sometimes a person, he has one of those and he doesn't have anything else, and there's only one indication and the person actually is suffering. Sometimes a person has so many of them, but he has bad diet, he's stressed out, he's got a vitamin deficiency, he's had a bad childhood, he was abused as a child. We have to look at so many things. So please do not diagnose yourself based on some of these symptoms that I'm going to mention to you now. It's so important, ya ikhwan. And we do not have su' al-dhan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have husn al-dhan of Allah. We have high hopes and high estimations of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So we live our life, and we shouldn't be people, you know, whenever I hear a knock on the door, man, that was jinn. You know, and I hear something in the radiator system, and that was jinn. No, we shouldn't be like this. We shouldn't be like this. So I'm going to mention some of the signs and symptoms, inshallah. The first thing, it may be a sudden love and a sudden hatred towards a particular individual. Husband and wife were very happy, they got married and they both wanted it, everything was fine. Suddenly they have a sudden hatred for one another. Can't even stand to look at one another. Can't even be in the presence of one another. They argue about the smallest of things, and the arguments turn into something great. Small arguments turn huge. We all argue with our spouses. But this is something on another level. You just can't agree on anything whatsoever. And one of my shayukh, Shaykh Iqbal Salafi Hafidhullah Pakistan, he mentioned that the woman will very quickly begin to curse the husband and his mother and his sisters. Why is this the case? Because the jinn knows what's going to tick this guy off the most. What's going to lead him to divorce his wife really quickly. I'll get her to start abusing his mother. I'll get her to start abusing his sisters. She can swear at him all day long, he'll remain silent. But the second she speaks about his mother, the second she speaks about his sisters, this is when the problems begin. Or it might be a sudden love. It might be a sudden love which comes out of nowhere. You hated a person, you didn't like a person, out of the blue, you can't get enough of the person. Suddenly the person falls in love. This is very common, like I mentioned, from women. They do this on their own husbands. Sicknesses which don't seem to have a cure. You get a sickness and the doctors don't know what's going on. All the tests, all the signs, all the symptoms are absolutely fine, and there's nothing wrong with you. Yet you yourself know there's an illness. There may be something involving sihr. Again, we're not saying there is, but there may be. Massive changes in personality. Huge changes in personality. Perhaps a person used to love Islam. One moment he turns around and he begins to hate Allah, a'udhu billah. He begins to hate Islam. This is because there's a jinn inside of that person. Likewise, a hatred for the adhan. A hatred for the adhan. The Messenger ﷺ told us that when the adhan is called, shaitan flees. Shaitan flees. If the person is possessed, he's going to hate the adhan. He's going to hate recitation of Quran. He's going to dislike anything to do with Islam. Immense strength. Perhaps a person has immense strength. Stories of sisters. One sister, 5'5", 10 people on her, she throws them all off. This is immense strength. This is because there is a jinn that is present. Again, it's very similar to jinn possession. And I don't normally like to mention this type of thing, because then you get inevitably 3 or 4 people from the crowd and they think, brother, I think I've got magic on me. And you know, subhanAllah, we shouldn't have this type of suspicion. So I'm not going to dwell on this too much. I'm not going to dwell on this too much. What's the difference though between jinn possession and magic? This is important. How do we know, or what's the difference between jinn possession and magic? Firstly, we need to know, as Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, he mentioned, that jinn, in and of themselves, they possess a person for one of 3 reasons. Due to love. So the jinn has seen you, it's fallen in love with you, and it possesses a person. Due to revenge. You have hurt the jinn, you've thrown something across the room, the jinn was sat there, its children were sat there, you've dropped some boiling water, you've harmed the jinn. Now, to get revenge, it wants to come for you. Or the third reason why jinn possess an individual is due to sihr. Due to being sent by a sahir. So magic and jinn possession, they both obviously involve the jinn. It can happen just because the jinn falls in love or the jinn wants revenge. Whereas with jinn possession, this jinn has been actively sent by somebody to come and cause you harm. A jinn possession, it may just be one jinn, but magic can sometimes involve multiple jinn, multiple shayateen inside of a person's body as well. So jinn possession is usually one on its own, but as for possession resulting from sihr, it usually involves more than that. And magic is, on the whole, in the vast majority of cases, sihr is much harder to break. Sihr is much harder to cure and get rid of. Why? Because there is a contract between the sahir and the shayateen. If it's just a jinn of his own accord, you're going to recite for 20 minutes, half an hour, he's going to think, you know what, I didn't sign up for this, I'm going. The person's not worth it. I love her, but I don't love her that much. I'm gone. I want revenge, but I'm not going to kill myself to get revenge. So it leaves fairly quickly. As for sihr, there is a contract, a written act between the two. And usually this contract is enforced by other shayateen, which they say to that one which has been sent, if you don't deal with it, we're going to come for you as well. So you better do the mission that you were sent for, otherwise we're going to kill you. Very, very quickly, the signs of a sahir, the signs of a magician. Number 1, he takes your name and your mother's name. How many Peers of Maulanas do we have? And you say, I have this problem. First thing, beta, what's your name? What's your mom's name? First thing, ya ikhwan. We in Birmingham, we have this operation where we go undercover. We go with hidden cameras, and we go with microphones, and we go and we visit these bees one by one, and we make up a random story. So I call him and I say, Peter Saab, my sister, she can't have children. And he says, okay, what's her name? What's her mother's name? And I make up a random name, and a random mother's name, and a random date of birth. And he says to me, she's got magic done on her. So I say, Peter Saab, let me come and visit you. And then we go and visit them, we get them on camera. Inshallah, this is all going to come out all at once. But we're not letting it out until we have the vast majority of them done and dusted by the permission of Allah. He also asks you for an item of clothing, a hair, an item of jewelry, some underwear, something like this. And I always explain this in a very simple way. When you see the police, police chase programs, police camera action, whatever it might be, the criminal, he runs into the forest, into the darkness of the night, and they bring the police dogs. And they give the police dog a sniff of his shirt or something like that, and the police dog sniffs and goes and finds him in the middle of the forest in the middle of the night. Likewise, with the sahir, he needs a picture of you. He needs something from your hair. He needs something from your clothing, so that the shayateen can identify you, so that they know this is the person we need to go and affect. Wasn't the sihr that was done on the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam? It was done from his comb. He used to comb his hair. And obviously when you have a beard, you comb your hair, sometimes a bit of hair comes out. And the Jewish Labid ibn al-A'sam, he took it and he did sihr on the Prophet ﷺ via the hair of his beard. Okay? So he needs something. If you go to somebody and he says, what's your name, what's your mother's name, date of birth? Somebody who's doing ruqyah, he doesn't need this. Somebody who's doing ruqyah according to Quran and Sunnah, we don't need this. We don't need this at all. We don't need an item of your clothing, or a hair, or a picture. We don't need any of this. If the person writes amulets, he gives you ta'weed, he is a sahir. Okay? If that person is giving you a ta'weez, he is a sahir. Okay? Shaykh Adil Hafidhullah, he said, we have two types of magicians. We have the one who is learned and the one who is not learned. The one who is not learned, he relies on blowing knots. Blowing knots. And doing sihr on the remains of animals. As for the one who is learned, he writes amulets. Okay? So writing an amulet is not just something that you can do from the top of your head. It's a branch of knowledge which the Sufiya will teach you if you go through their ranks. Okay? Many beads, etc., they will give you an amulet. Blowing on knots. Obviously, if he blows on knots, then he is a sahir. This is an element of magic. If he whispers or he murmurs things which you can't hear, things which are not clearly Arabic language, clearly in the Quran, clearly du'as from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and he begins to whisper them and murmur them, then you know that there's something wrong here. Ruqyah is recitation of Quran or adhkar from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in a very clear way. In a very clear way. So if I'm reciting, I'm not going to recite to myself. I need to recite so that you can hear. We also have jinn catching. Jinn catching. This is Abdurrauf bin Halima and his crew. They are indulged in jinn catching. And it's become very famous on the internet. Because they had one supposed jinn which was talking about the Illuminati, and obviously the youth love to hear about these type of things. And what they do, they take a person who is possessed. And then the marid, the person who is ill, what they do, they take him. And they say, we're going to catch your jinn in that person. So he's like a trap. And then supposedly that jinn jumps from him into the next person's body, and then they speak to it, and then they get rid of it. This is a branch of sihr, ya ikhwan, because the jinn will never ever ever do this for you unless you are doing something for them in return. It's approaching Asr time now, so we'll end it here, but inshallah we'll look at treating sihr in the next talk, which is entitled Ruqya. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.